Yeah, I wanted the reason I asked, like, I wanted you to get into some of the characters and the way you tell these themes and these stories because you talked a little bit about like diversifying your story, your bookshelves, and so many times
Hmm.
people are like, oh, I
Yes,
can't relate to this character or that character based on race or anything, right? But you've talked about themes that are very human themes, right? Whether it's love, whether it's grief. So I'd love for you just to kind of talk about that.
absolutely, absolutely. I one thing that diversifying ourselves is so important, and I really want to debunk the idea that someone cannot relate to a Black character because at the end of the day, we are all human, and I think some people struggle with sometimes reading diversely because the life experience can be different. But my argument is as long as you care for the character, then you're already hooked into the story. And caring for the character really does come down to common themes, right? Like you said, grief is a common theme. We all experience it, but we all experience grief so differently. And so sometimes you might pick up a book and say, like, oh, I really felt that. I really felt that person's grief because I've experienced that form before. And sometimes you can't relate, but you can also sympathize with that person. And I think that's what makes one you human, but then it also makes the character so much more meatier, right? Like you can really like chew into them and really follow them along as they kind of figure out what's going on in their life. Also, when it comes to stories and like diversifying our shelves, it's not always about the character. Sometimes it's about the plot. Like, can I follow this story along? Am I interested? You know, one reason why I love fantasy stories and I also love thrillers is because you're so hooked into what's going to happen next. Like, there's this theme of, I don't know what's happening and I can't wait to find out. And that's what keeps you like flipping those pages. And so I do find it frustrating sometimes when people don't pick up stories with Black characters or, Indonesian or Hispanic or whatever part of diaspora you are a part of. I find it frustrating when they can't pick up those stories because they feel there's this fear that they can't relate or there's this fear that they're being preached to when really not every story is that way. Now, every book is different. It's going to do something different for each person, but there's so many books, and that's one cool thing about the world. And now, thankfully, I would say traditional publishing is starting to diversify a little bit more. We are starting to get a lot more stories from diverse voices, and all of our stories aren't the same. We don't all have the same journeys. Some of our characters might share similar identities, but they're different people being told by different people. And I feel like all of those voices are valid.